to the week in advance again. Christopher, how are you doing tonight?
Really fabulous. How are things there in sunny Cal?
Things are going forward. Been focused a lot on this astrology. There's a lot happening in the astrology right now. And there's, a lot to talk about today.
Absolutely, yeah. We're starting off Friday as the moon finishes up its little happy dance in Virgo, and then it's going to flip over into Libra over the weekend. So I think that's going to make everybody feel a little bit lighter, a little more social, because it's been an intense week, actually 10 days now.
Yeah, it has. Especially, we've been coming off of this Mars going forward, which in Libra is kind of subtle. But here it is now really making its mark. The will to move forward in a lot of our lives is really becoming apparent, especially as now the tension between Mars and Pluto begin. There's this dynamic life force that's getting more and more intense and more intense. And I think it's been weird because I'm going to be completely honest with you, Chris. These are confusing times, in my opinion, because Mars is in a weird place already doing a retrograde in a weird cross. Then you've got all this Neptune energy in Pisces and Chiron in Pisces, and all these Pisces energies are about to go retrograde, and they're stopping, which adds for more confusion. And we're in the middle of Gemini, which is trying to be logical about everything, but it's made hard squares on a new moon to Neptune. What a really kind of foggy, weird kind of time.
Yeah, it really is. It's very spooky, and I think one of the things that we have to always kind of zero in on is the fact that this is actually kind of a long passage that started, in 2011, 2012, when we began to see all the elements come together for these grand squares and these very intense, heavy outer planet interactions. And so we've been building up for 2-3 years now to kind of the trigger point, which we've gone through. But now as these heavy planets are continuing to disengage, we're still getting like little aftershocks. It's very much like living in LA, you get the big jolt, and then you get the damn aftershocks for the next 6 weeks. And that really is, I think, what is going on with this magic dance going on in the heavens.
It definitely is, and we are with add to it Mercury retrograde, right? This weekend we got Mercury going retrograde in Cancer, which maybe is a saving grace, in my opinion. Usually Mercury retrogrades come in and kind of disrupt things. This might be finally us getting some clarity, as maybe we do need to turn around and kind of go backwards and kind of look at facts again, and maybe they're dealing with emotions. We do have Jupiter here in Cancer. There's a lot around our emotions and trying to figure things out. There's a lot of this water energy with Neptune we talked about. We do have Chiron here. We also do have Saturn and Scorpio. So maybe this little dip into the pool here to go underneath and kind of turn back around and go the other way might give us some sort of information we might have been lacking or been missing on. And at this point, I'll take anything to kind of help with figuring things out, even if maybe it is a Mercury retrograde. Sometimes this is one of those things where it's the last thing you think that'll work, like we'll hit on, like bang on it. Maybe that'll fix it. Maybe this Mercury retrograde is something we bang on that fixes it. I don't know.
Well, that would be the ideal outcome. I actually had a brief discussion with a friend and client who is, if I remember right, she is in Canada. And every once in a while, people I'm chatting with come up with some really interesting insights. And she pointed out that Mercury retrogrades, everybody, is like, oh my God, Mercury retrograde. But the reality is, especially in our era, we have so much going on and so much information being transferred and so many other kinds of shifts going on in our life that when Mercury goes retrograde, it's saying stop and process. Because you've got all this stuff that you've been doing over the last 3 months, and you need to sort it out, look at it, and get some kind of an insight from all these threads that are going on in your life. And I think that really is what the Mercury retrograde cycle was placed there for. That's why we have, that appearance of Mercury dancing backwards in the heavens, is because we are on a little bit of a timeout every 3 or 4 months. and we need to stop and honor that process of being able to encapsulate, to combine all the different facets that are in extremis frequently in our lives. So it is a period of processing, and as we move into the weekend, I think it's important for people to shift their, like, the sense of dread about Mercury retrograde and look at it from that other angle that, oh, okay, I can slow down and kind of figure all this stuff out now.
Yeah, more precise. It's like a paint roller, you know. Whenever I paint a house, like, I love going back down, like in catching the other part of it, and we just can't keep stroking one way. You know, there's that downside, which in many ways is what actually completes the paint on the wall. And I think this is completing karma. I think that retrogrades are karmic, and they definitely do review things, and they're important. And at this point in this juncture in our lives, I'm looking at this Mercury retrograde as a very unique one because Mercury will come from Cancer back into Gemini. This will also be a Sun conjunct Mercury retrograde in Gemini, and we're in the Sun in Gemini, so that's the natural ruler of Mercury. So I think that there's a very special aspect of this Mercury retrograde which has been hidden in the background, I think, of everything else that's been pulling us. It's like the next thing you know, Mercury's retrograde. This one's kind of been a creeper. And I think there's so much other stuff going on in the astrology that this one is lighter than normal. I'm going to be honest. Maybe that's not the term I should have used. Maybe it's not as apparent because there's so much stuff going on. So this one kind of is in the background. And in Cancer, it's a little bit more subtle, you know. But I think when it comes back into Gemini here, it'll be much more impacting. But I think to get back on subject of this weekend, talk about a weekend of kind of a lot of things firing off, a Mercury retrograde. We also have the Sun going to square Chiron. Now, that's kind of an interesting transit to go through.
Yeah, I think whenever the Sun, or when any planet really interacts with Chiron, it pulls up a lot of wounds that we have to, you know, do some finishing up work on. And even though the Sun is fairly fast moving, you know, its actual influence is 3 to 4 days as it's in aspect to Chiron. It is going to be coming from that region of first the mind, and you know, looking at the wounds that we carry in the collective consciousness and the psyche. So I do feel like it's going to be a very intense kind of blip there on the radar screen showing up. And I think that it, you know, since Chiron and Neptune still are in that same position in Pisces at 7 and 17 degrees, even though there's a 10-degree spread, I think that you're going to have a very Neptunian essence around this too. So it is going to be interesting to watch the interaction on Saturday of, you know, the two planets, the Sun and Chiron, doing their little interchange there. So there may be a few tears shed for things that you're still holding on to, some old regrets, some old wounds from the past.
Yeah, and how interesting as this weekend happens, we have the Mercury retrograde, which, as you say, is a review period, but the moon comes over Mars, which is kind of a you know, a kind of pushy element. You know, it's always kind of like, I want to move, I want to make things going, and especially because we still have all these cardinal cross planets, even though it's not a true cross, they're still in cardinal signs. So that means the moon is coming in through some off-road territory here, and it's over Mars. So there's this kind of pushy element this weekend, and then here's the Sun in Gemini, which wants to stimulate and make things happen, but that Neptunian energy, that Chiron energy in Pisces, is kind of like go with the flow, kind of, you know, see behind the scenes. So I think this is a weekend where could be a lot of change of perception. But if you're somebody who's trying to go 100 miles an hour, this could be a weekend where there might be a tear shed because it might not just follow through for you right away. And I think that's part of the lesson, is to learn to surrender, to learn to accept, to learn that maybe we need to understand these long dynamic roads we're going on. And I say that because Pluto is in Capricorn, which if you invest in a destination, you'll get there. You know, maybe it's not about how fast you go. I think that's the lesson of Mars square Pluto, is learning how to invest your actions in a certain kind of aspect. And with it in Libra and Capricorn, there's this aspect of taking the long, higher road, and there's a lot to weigh out. So maybe there's a reason why it's all not going right. Maybe there's still so many details with Mercury retrograde. There's so many things in our life that we need to review, that we need to weigh out, that we need to make sure, and that's what this time is. And in my opinion, the reason why the universe is doing this is maybe because what's coming on the other side of all this transits that we're going through is something extraordinarily powerful that takes a little bit more time to make. You know, they always say it takes, whiskey that's in a barrel for, 20 years is much better than whiskey that's, from, CVS for like 1 year, like it's kind of that energy.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's the aging process, good wine coming into its own right. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting is as we see, this Mars interaction filling out with this growing opposition to Uranus and the T-square aspect with Pluto, I do feel like all of this is going to be channeled over into that side of Cancer. And I think Jupiter is going to be the release mechanism, even though it's going to be pretty much out there. We don't have a real grand square. We don't have a real hard set of aspects. I think you're still seeing a lot of the Cancer issues, seeing a lot of the need for home, for family, for preserving your nest. All of that stuff is definitely going to be highlighted, and there's going to be some tension here about where are you at, where's your nest, where's your masculine energy at. It's over there on the other side of the chart from its natural home. So there's going to be a lot of confusion, a little bit of stress, I think, overall for the weekend. It's going to be social, a lot of things going on out there in society, but I think there's going to be a lot of inner confusion, a little bit of angst that carries us well into the coming week.
Yeah, because we also have Venus going to make a trine to Pluto, which is kind of a rebooting relationship-wise, also more importantly in things we're manifesting. It's almost like the universe is trying to clear the decks. So maybe this confusion, we can all kind of switch gears. We could all switch our heads. We could all kind of like start over. This could be a weekend where you just kind of go, you know what, I'm going to start over. Like, you know what, I'm going to change things. I'm going to go this way now. And I think that's good. The other aspect which makes it more confusing is Neptune does go retrograde on Monday. So Saturday, Sunday is Neptune going stationary. And this is a very weird kind of veil that we're going to uncover here. Neptune going retrograde in many ways could start to expose conscious and unconscious aspects of your life. So I think as we come out of the weekend, boom, there comes Neptune retrograde. Boom, the moon comes into Scorpio. And this gets into an even more watery world that's going to highlight this Mercury retrograde extensively. This is definitely one of those weeks, to try and see through it all and to try and navigate, with your eyes closed a little bit.
Yeah, you definitely need to work on that, listening to the inner voice and keeping that realm open for that voice from above. As we progress in the week, we've got Venus coming up to that opposition to Saturn. Yes. And the moon is going to be mixed into that kind of a happy dance there. And I think that, we've got two sextiles going on with that. Both sides of the equation will be in sextile to Pluto there in Capricorn. And I think we're going to really see the potential for learning new things. It's not just healing the past, but Saturn being the great teacher and sitting there in that realm of, digging deep within the Scorpio energy, then the moon coming into that association with Saturn, Venus being where it likes to be in Taurus. I think this next week is going to be very revealing for people, and they're going to learn things about themselves that they have perhaps been struggling with and not even been conscious of.
Yeah, and when you add that to the Neptune retrograde, it can hit you harder than ever. I said this on my webinar, like Venus and Taurus, it wants to be the great kind of, I'm in the 5-star resort, kind of feel great and the best of this. But Saturn and Scorpio is like, okay, yeah, you just spent your last dollar. So are you really a 5-star person, or did you just kind of fake it? And, there's kind of this all exposing of like, where's the reality check here? Where's the real truth? And here's the truth in yourself. And this has to do with relationships. This has to deal with things we're manifesting, maybe projects. I think that that certain aspects of our life reach a position this week of no more. You know what? Or you know what? It is right. Continue. It's a checkpoint. It's like a big checkpoint with the universe, and it's an X-ray machine.
That's very true. And Venus really is very Taurean in that it likes to, acquire things. Venus likes to, show up with the diamond tiara and the big necklace thing going on, and the sleeves up above the elbows. So it can be like those vamps from the 1930s with all of the drama and all of the acquisition and all the possessiveness. And then we've got Saturn sitting on the other side, which is like the austerity symbol within the zodiac. It's like, okay, time to be very zen, get rid, sell your jewelry and go out and feed the poor, have a higher vision here. So
it's the bones, yeah, it's the skeleton. It's like there's no need for skin or anything. Like it's just kind of raw, the structure, It does with the bones. Yeah.
Right. And so we're going to see some people really have inner conflict come up, and they may get slapped upside the head with, a significant spiritual awakening, I guess you could say.
Dun, dun, dun. But I think it's a positive one. I think we need this because it's been so confusing. Gosh, the universe is doing some really magical stuff right now to get us to some place that's really cool. And gosh, you know what? The checkpoints to get in this place are pretty damn serious, So this is one of those checkpoints, and it's a good one. It's an all-exposing one, and it's allowing you to look at what you're manifesting, who in your life is connected, because even though Venus is ruled by Taurus, it is co-ruled by Libra, which is interesting because Libra is kind of the center focal point of this North Node and Mars energy that's happening, and Mars is starting its big square to Pluto like we talked about. So gosh, there's a lot around these actions, there's a lot around relationships, there's a lot around manifesting and things. I mean, this is all kind of condensing everything to what's right, what's wrong, and what's out, what's not. I actually spoke in my horoscope this week how we got to watch projections too. With this Chiron energy and Pisces, there's these wounds that come really sensitively, and with Mars there justifying itself, literally Mars in Libra likes to justify and what's fair, what's not, what's right, what's wrong. We got to be careful that we're not thinking we're on our high horse and we're right and you're wrong, or I'm wounded and you did this to me and that. Like there's a lot of that, especially when Venus and Saturn oppose, where it's all exposing the truth. There's big decisions that need to be made. This could be where watch your own ego, especially because Uranus in Aries is really kind of hot right now as the other planets are kind of slow, and Jupiter's starting to get more and emotionally opening up. We also have Black Moon Lilith and Leo, which has been squaring Venus and Taurus. So there is this kind of inner, I think we have to watch ourselves and learn the Pisces lesson, which is compassion and surrender, and not let our Gemini selves go, oh my God, and start to create little weird drama in our head or say things that are wrong. That kind of could come up, I think.
Oh, I think it definitely is right below the surface. And in addition to the forgiveness lessons and the acceptance of what is, I think that the real theme that's going to end up playing out by the end of the week is getting beyond that space of seeing yourself as a culpable person. I think that in proportion to our being able to forgive ourselves and those around us, that's going to be the release mechanism. That again is what Chiron is all about. It's teaching us that the only reason that we're holding on to our wounds, the only reason that we have our diseases and our discomforts is because we're still not willing to forgive others. And until you can arrive at that point, why would you expect forgiveness for yourself? So, there's a lot of potential deep revelation going on, and Mercury moving back toward its natural home in Gemini, it is going to cause us to have to think about these things over the next 3 or 4 weeks and look very deeply within to understand the realm that we live in with our feeling consciousness.
Feeling consciousness, forgiveness consciousness, I think, is hitting the nail on the head, and kind of this poor me mentality leaving, you know, because Chiron in Pisces is a wounded puppy saying it got a bad hand, that God delivered something wrong. And it's not God's fault. You know, that's kind of Chiron Pisces lesson. It ain't God's fault, you know. And I think that's a huge thing that's coming up here. Because as we kind of exit this week, guess what happens? Now Chiron goes retrograde. As we come towards a full moon in Sagittarius, you know, a lot of things are shifting because, you know, I mean, it's a big deal. You know, on the 12th, literally, you know, this full moon is brewing because as we come into the next week in advance, on the 13th, we have a full moon. Friday the 13th, full moon.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be it's going to be kind of a fun ride, though. I think ultimately what that is going to be focusing in on is the idea that, you know, we have to go on. Sagittarius is all about journeys, and I think that this moon, when it becomes full, it's going to take us on a very profound journey into those realms of our passions and looking across the wheel at the realm we occupy in our intellect. So it's going to be an interesting ride as the full moon builds, and there's going to be a lot of edginess because we are going to have, you know, again, that Neptune interaction as the moon starts to square it, and the Chiron interaction as the moon squares it, the sun squares it. So yeah, this whole week is going to be a week of processing information, giving yourself a little bit of grace, giving those around you a little bit of grace, and then being willing to take the next step.
Yeah, and you know what? As these times are confusing and everything, there's a reason. There's some, you know, if you're very spiritual enough, you can see where it's really going. That's the whole funny part about this, is if you tap into your intuition and your real true psychic awareness now, the path is clearer than a bell. It's trying to teach you to not let your reality be the predecessor of where you're going. It's like, can't you just see behind the curtain and see where we're going this? And I think it's teaching us that. And I think for those who can go with the forgiveness, who can cruise back with their arms behind and go, even though reality is some weird place right now, gosh, I know exactly where it's going, and I know that these weird changes are happening for this reason because it's still pulling me in that direction. You're fine through this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be kind of a joyride. Well, shall we take a look at a card or two?
Yeah, or three.
Okay. Well, synchronistically, I stumbled across an old deck I had of the I Ching cards. So I thought I would pull up an I Ching hexagram to start off with. And the hexagram that I pulled up here is called Chin. And basically, this is very synchronistically connected to this coming week. The number of hexagram is number 40, and it means removing obstacles. And I think that's what we're going to approach now as we move forward in the week, is not so much about doing new things or entering into new activities, but removing the obstacles from the past is going to be a primary theme. And then once you have arrived at that point where you've gotten rid of this deadwood that's been, you know, blocking your path, then you can return back to the normal modus operandi. So for those who haven't played with the I Ching, you might want to pick up a book and a few coins and familiarize yourself with it, because often the I Ching gives you an additional layer of insight that's very timely. Pardon me. So we start off the weekend with, of all things, a magician being called upon to transform. And really the major theme, I think, with this weekend's energy is inner transformation. You're going to have to go from projecting all of it outside of you to starting to really address that Mercury retrograde energy, looking within and realizing that, you know, the real solution to everything that's going on in your life is, in fact, based on the interior journey. Through the weekend, watch out, we have the Five of Swords, a little bit of deception here. And of course, the only way we can be deceived is when we attempt to deceive ourselves, when we're ignoring the warning signals, when we're not paying attention to the things that the universe is putting up in front of us and saying, hey, you know, is this real? Is this not real? Are you going to invest in this energy? And where is it going to take you? So really looking deeply within the soul, doing some soul searching. That flips over by the time the weekend is finishing off. We have the Wheel of Fortune. So starting to move back in that direction of return rather than loss. And I think a lot of people this last 8 or 9 days have felt like all of a sudden things were just not showing up that they had expectations of. And I think next week we're going to see the wheel turn around again. And missed communication, you're going to be able to catch up with it. So a lot of potential for Mercury to bring things back around so you can resolve them. As we move into next week, we have temperance, moderation. And once again, this is very much in tune with Chiron's activity, telling us to, you know, don't be judgmental, don't get into situations where we're condemning those around us and failing to see that, you know, we've got a gaping wound within us. So temperance is definitely a significant part of this coming week. And again, you know, the anger issues we also associate with Mars will be coming up more and more because Mars is going to start picking up speed and advancing and, you know, making its way toward Scorpio ultimately. The final card for this coming week is a Six of Rods. So by the end of the week, I think a lot of people are going to be feeling like they've accomplished a lot more than they expected to. And I think there's going to be a sense of surprise, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of breakthrough that comes through at the end of the week. Whereas right now, starting off the weekend and going through the weekend, you may feel like, oh, damn, I got a flat tire. But by the time the week is over, AAA will have shown up and changed the tire on your behalf, and you haven't even gotten your white sweater dirty. How cool is that?
That's super cool. I think the best card in there was that Five of Swords. That card to me also is somebody trying to win and everybody gives up. Like if you see the other people, they drop their swords, and the guy's like, ah. It's like, don't try and win so hard this week. I think it's like, don't try and push it so hard. You know, like this is a week to just follow it, understand the course, but it doesn't mean that you need to run so fast and try and outcharge this thing and push things too hard. I definitely see a lot of the Magician card and the Temperance card and all this energy is kind of like, be a magician, do the magic, like let the magic happen. You know what? If you're gonna, you know, fairy dust this, like it's not about how hard you do it. It's not about how much muscle you have. You know, it's definitely a time to see, you know, your spells work.
Exercise a little finesse and you know, extend a little grace and love yourself through the magic ride that we're going to be going on for the next 7-day cycle here, because it will land us in a place where a lot of revelation comes for the coming full moon.
Yeah, and your dreams. I think there's a lot around dreams right now. This could be a really big dream window here. So I think that there's some magical lessons through the dream world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. When Mercury is involved with Cancer, and it is going retrograde in Cancer, yeah, you get the nocturnal presence that really floats to the surface, and that's when you get a lot of messages from the depths of the soul.
Yes, we do. Well, it was great to talk with you another week, and I look forward to talking with you more next week, especially for the big full moon on Friday the 13th.
Yes, I will make sure that I carry my lucky rabbit's foot all weekend.
Wonderful.
I don't believe in carrying dead animal things, so to lug around my rabbit's foot, I have to, you know, carry the rabbit with. So it gets a little bit weird, but that's what makes life fun.
Yeah, whenever my cat Leo gets in trouble, I always like pick up his paw and I go, "I'll make it a rabbit's foot if you mess around one more time." And he looks at me and runs away.
Yes, and it's amazing how intuitive they are. They know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. Little does he know I'm about to sell him on the black market. 4 little rabbit's feet. So, all right. Well, thanks for hanging out again, and yeah, we'll talk to you next week.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Good night.